Hello and welcome to this edition of Biology Bites. Now today I'm going to be talking about why finesse is best. And that has to do with the buoyancy factor. The reality is everything that's underwater and that lives underwater is pretty much neutral buoyancy. I mean, the fish live there. They're pretty much neutral. And everything that lives in the water, like from crawdads to water dogs to, all the fish, everything else is pretty much neutrally buoyant. And that's why when you get into fishing and the fishing gets really, really tough, and even if you're a pro and this is the way you make your living, and you might be fishing on incredible bass fisheries like Kentucky Lake or Clear Lake or Okeechobee or anything like that. Suddenly, if those fish, due to certain factors, become extremely, extremely stingy and really do not want to eat anything, suddenly everybody goes to finesse. From your weightless Senkos to your really lightweight Ned rigs to your drop shot to, maybe even a jerkbait that's very neutral and buoyant. And that's kind of the focus of it, is everything in the water is very neutral and buoyant. From fish, from like everything there. Like if a crawdad, if it scoots along really fast, yeah, it's moving fast. But suddenly it like pops up in the water and it stops, it very slowly sinks back down to the bottom. Even fish, when they're dying, they might sit there and they're kind of dying and they might slowly float up, or they might stop and slowly float down. But that's the whole reason of this, and the whole reason that I think the finesse is the best if you always and consistently want to catch fish. And like I said, this is even with pros, when they're on like the best lake ever, if it gets tough, they go finesse. And that has to do with the buoyancy factor. Everything in the water is lightweight. So if the fishing is tough and you go to very, very light weights, like a 1/15th, or you go to jigs at like a 1/8, or you go to a weightless Senko in that, that's why these baits will constantly and always catch fish. And you know me, I consistently finesse fish and fish very light. And well, I'm fishing lakes that are public lakes. They're not great bass lakes. They don't have a huge population. They're not known as an incredible bass fishery. And so me, with always going finesse and always going lightweight, that's why I'm often able to catch fish at these lakes where a lot of my viewers and a lot of people that I have contact with and that say, I went there and I blanked, and I couldn't. Because I don't know how they're fishing it. I don't know if they're going that finesse and that lightweight. But what it does is like a weightless Senko. It's very slowly sinking down. A little 1/15th ounce Ned, you throw it in, very slowly sinking down. Drop shot with your lightweight. You're working on the bottom, it's kind of swimming. And every time you kind of stop, when it sinks, it's very slow. And that's where the buoyancy factor comes in. Because to look the most natural under the water, everything is pretty much almost neutrally buoyant. I mean, if you're a swimmer and you go get in the lake and go get in the water, you don't weigh 180 pounds if you weigh 180 pounds. You weigh a lot less because 70% of our body is water. So you get in the water and you're a lot lighter. You're a lot more buoyant because you neutrally match the water. And the fish are also that way because they live in the water. And even crawdads and everything else, I said, they're very buoyant. They're almost neutrally buoyant when they're in the water. So if you're working any sort of bait and you're working it, even on the bottom, if you're bouncing on the bottom, if you have a heavier jig, even if it's finesse jig, it's like 3/8 or a 1/2 ounce or a 1/4 ounce, whatever. When you're working over something and you like pop it over and you drop it, boom, it drops fairly quick. But if you take that weight to even lighter and it comes over it and suddenly it might drop a little bit slower. So all of that becomes an issue when a bite is tough. And that's why almost everybody goes to finesse fishing when the bite is tough. But you can go to finesse fishing and always catch fish, even if they're really, really active. Or if they're really active and you're fishing a spot that somebody else has already fished, if you come behind them and go really finesse, anyway, they caught a lot of the active fish. You might actually catch fish behind them because you're fishing something that's finesse and something that's more neutrally buoyant and looks much more natural in the water. And that's one of the reasons that I always use mono. Because, well, braid and fluoro sink. Mono floats. It has wider diameter. Anyway, the fish really can't see it, but that's bigger diameter, everything else. It floats. So when I go finesse, and I fish finesse mostly, and I fish almost always mono. I don't fish fluoro, I don't fish braid. And that's one of the reasons, because it has a lot of resistance, it floats. So as you're working that lighter bait, and you're letting it drop, or it's dropping down the water, that line has resistance, as well as the bait being really light. So all of that leads into a more of a buoyancy factor to the bait you're working. And yes, this is mostly, I mean, a lot of crankbaits, everything else, you wind up the water, they're moving fast, or a spinnerbait. But even with all of that stuff, going a little bit lighter. When it hits something, if it doesn't just like drop really quick, if it flutters just slightly more, and all that, it can make it look more natural to the bass, which will end up getting you more bites, and maybe bites from even bigger fish, because it has that buoyancy factor. It looks more natural as it's coming through the water. Because fish, I mean, if they're fishing, swimming really quick in that, yeah, they're blah, blah, blah. But the second they stop, they just don't like sink. Or just don't instantly like float up really quick. They kind of stall out. Or like I said, if they're injured and everything else and they're doing it, they kind of might slowly. But yeah, that's why I think finesse will always, and it's proven, even from the pros in that there's sometimes, either it's because of a high pressure system or a storm system or suddenly cooler water or hotter water or whatever, that those fish will go into not wanting to feed very much. And in order to actually catch them when maybe nobody else is catching them, is going to that finesse and thinking about the fact that the most natural looking bait in the water is buoyant. And when you go finesse and go a lot lighter, and even I said mono, and yeah, a lot of people that they almost, everybody uses fluoro or braid to fluoro, leader, or something like that, but it all sinks. If maybe just having one mono pole set up for when it's finesse, it might help you catch a lot more fish and everything. Like I said, I'm a wildlife biologist, I've studied this stuff, everything else, and that's I mean, I see so many people, and they will usually use weights, quarter ounce or a half ounce or whatever, that, I mean, they just, I don't know, they just think heavy. Even when they go finesse, they might go to a smaller profile, but they'll still put a heavier weight in front of that smaller profile. But as light as you can get, and like I said, even mono will totally help, because everything in the water column that lives in the water column is pretty much neutrally buoyant. So the more you mimic that, the better you will do as far as being able to fish. And I said, I've seen it. I go to the same lakes that a lot of my viewers go to. They fish the same spots. They know my videos. They go there. And I haven't really, I mean, they know I go finesse, I need a drop shot, but they might use the same rig with something that's a little bit heavier, and they might use fluoro instead of mono, so the finesse and buoyancy thing might not be the same. But that's why I came on here. That's why I did the Biology Bites, is why finesse is best, and it can help in a lot of different areas of fishing and everything. But just think about the buoyancy factor. That pretty much everything in the water, when it's in the water, that lives in the water column, is neutrally buoyant. So when they, you know, start getting ready to die or fall in the water and they're fluttering, it's going to be a very natural, slow presentation. Like the weightless Senko, which is probably caught more fish than any other bait in the world. at this point because it looks the most natural and falls at a very neutrally buoyant rate. That's why I came on here. That's why I did this biology bites. I really hope it helps. I hope it helps you catch more fish. And well, until next time.